This is Stephen. He's going to teach you a bit about lettering. He's a professional sign writer, and I hope that you're all going to learn a bit of something today.
Right, good evening. I was a sign writer and then vinyl lettering came in, but it's making a bit of a comeback. There are many approaches to letter spacing and letters, and I can only tell you what I know basically, or what I've found out and what I've been taught. So before we go into letter spacing, I actually want to take you back one stage and look at the letters themselves and how they formed and what the character of that letter is. Now, it's a bit difficult really because you've got to decide whether letter spacing is an art or a science. And I've thought pretty long and hard about it, and I reckon it's about 60% art and 40% science. So if we start and have a look at it, we take a letter and we look at a letter and we're used to seeing them on a daily basis. And you take letter H for instance, and there it is, and we turn it upside down and you can sort of like see the crossbar immediately becomes much lower than the visual centre. If it was on visual centre, it'll look to be too low. So that's it that way up, and it looks about balanced and okay. But this crossbar is actually above the visual centre. Likewise, you take a letter S, and these aren't the best because they've had the bottoms flattened off so they stand on a flat line. And we're used to looking at it like that. You turn it upside down and you can see the weight of the letter straight away. Human nature, we like things planted and based, so the weight of the letter is in the bottom. Another example is the letter E as well. Again, we're used to seeing it like that. Turn it upside down and you can see how much visually the cross stroke is altered there. Now another thing about letters is square letters. They sit on the top and bottom line. Round letters go slightly above and below the line. Now the reason for that is this H is in contact with that top line virtually the whole width of the letter, or the space that it commands. If we were to do this letter O, where it actually touches the top and bottom line, it'll look too small and too weak because it's only actually in contact with a line there and the letter is commanding that amount of space. So it's losing that there. So to strengthen it up and make it look as big as the other letters, we actually have to take it slightly above and below the line. Take a letter K. This bottom stroke here, it always comes out further than the top stroke, because if it came out to the same distance, it just wouldn't look architecturally strong enough visually to be supporting that weight above it. And same with the letter R. This curve here tends to sit out here, like that does. So you get that strength in it, so it looks like it's supported on that baseline and that it's actually quite strong. Those are a few things about the letters themselves, that they're optically adjusted for height on the round letters. They're strengthened on the baseline, as in the case of the K and the R. And these centre strokes are actually above visual centre. So if we start and have a little bit of a simplistic look at letter spacing now, there's one system, and it's called the OVH system. But what it's doing is distinguishing three different types of letter. It's distinguishing a round letter, it's distinguishing the V and the A, which are like undercut letters, and then it's distinguishing all the letters that fall in the category of having flat sides. What this is doing is saying that this letter O within its parameters has that amount of unaccounted for space. The letter V has that amount of unaccounted space, and the letter H is basically doesn't have any unaccounted space. Same with letter I. That's the same. It doesn't have these voids within the structure of the letter. So the first amount of space you will get will be between two flat-sided letters like that. Your next one is, if we spaced a round letter at this distance here, it would be too far away, because we're using the same distance there, but we're not accounting for that space there and that space there. So what we do is we move it up a bit this way. Likewise, an extreme example would be a V and an A. You've got a letter V there. There's like the unaccounted for space. And then a letter A. Now, the letter A would then come there. And if you take that away, they're far too far apart. And in effect, what you have to do is put the letter A to get it right, actually, under the letter V. Now, the best way that I've heard this described is, because you can get all systems where people have got a metric system and all those letters fall into 3 and all those fall into 2 or 5 or 6 spacing. It's just too convoluted to use on a practical daily basis. So the best explanation I've heard of this is marble theory. So what marble theory is, we've got a letter H, then we'll have a letter, I'll block it out a bit, then we'll have a letter I, then we'll have a letter, let's say A, something there. Okay, what marble theory says is, if you imagine a jar of marbles, is how many marbles can you put in that space? This one's that wide apart, this one's only that wide apart, but it's wider at the top. So we're looking roughly, if you can get it in your head when you look at lettering, the number of marbles that you can fit into this space needs to be the same between the two letters. It's not the gap that you're looking at. And again, if we were to put a letter T here, which is one of the more awkward ones, it's got all this space here. So this is actually overlapping considerably onto the letter A. And you're looking at hopefully the same amount of marbles in that gap as you would between the other letters. And that's the best explanation that I've probably been given for how you do it. All the other ones are just too difficult to use on a daily basis, so you just have to try and develop an eye. What restricted things in the early days was typography, because each letter, even though it was a smaller block, was set on a square block in the middle of it like that. So a lot of the letter spacing was very bad, and they had a system called piker M's and piker N's. You couldn't be subtle with it because it was restricted by that block that it was sat on.